2:17 in the morning, a security camera inside a quiet suburban house triggered a motion alert. Nothing unusual about that. Home security systems generate alerts all the time. A shifting shadow, a pet walking through the hallway, a passing car's headlights slipping through a window. Most homeowners stop paying attention to them after a while. But this alert was different because when the homeowner reviewed the footage, later that day, the camera had captured something it was never supposed to detect: motion, clear movement across the room. The system's motion tracking software outlined the movement exactly as it was designed to do. A digital box appeared on the screen, following something traveling slowly from the bed toward the bedroom door. But there was a problem. Inside that box, there was nothing there. No person, no animal, no shadow, nothing visible at all. And yet the camera continued tracking it, frame by frame, step by step, as though something invisible had just walked out of the room. The bedroom door slowly opened. The motion tracking box moved across the floor, and then it exited into the hallway. Just seconds later, the system stopped recording. The motion had ended. But the person who had been sleeping in that room that night was gone. No forced entry, no broken windows, no alarm triggered. And according to the security system logs, nothing had entered the house. Something had simply left the room, and the camera recorded it. This happened here. The house itself sits in an ordinary neighborhood, tree-lined streets, two-story homes, the kind of place where neighbors recognize each other's cars. Nothing about the house stands out. No history of strange events, no reported disturbances, just a normal home equipped with a modern security system. Motion sensors, door sensors, indoor cameras covering the hallway and living room. Like millions of homes today, the system was designed to monitor movement and provide alerts if something unexpected occurred. It had worked perfectly for years. Every alert had a clear explanation. Until that night. On the night the footage was recorded, 2 people were inside the house. One of them had gone upstairs shortly after midnight to sleep. The other remained downstairs watching television. The house was locked. Every door sensor was armed. Every window sensor was active. The security system log shows normal activity for most of the night. No alarms, no alerts, nothing unusual, until 2:17 a.m. That's when the hallway camera detected motion, and the bedroom door opened. The camera that recorded the event wasn't unusual. It was a standard home security camera with motion detection software. When the camera detects movement, it draws a digital box around the moving object and begins recording. It's the same technology used in countless home security systems today. If someone walks through the frame, the software tracks them. If a pet crosses the floor, it tracks the pet. If shadows move across the room, it may track those too. But the system always tracks something visible. That's how the algorithm works. Movement must be detected visually. The camera doesn't guess, it analyzes pixels changing between frames. And on that night, the system detected movement. Very clear movement. Movement traveling across the bedroom floor, from the bed to the door, reviewing the footage. The homeowner didn't see the alert until the following morning. It had appeared on their phone during the night, But like most late-night alerts, it was ignored. That is, until the bedroom was checked. The bed was empty. The person who had gone upstairs hours earlier was no longer there. At first, there seemed like an obvious explanation. Maybe they had left the house early. Maybe they went outside. Maybe they were already downstairs. But a quick search of the house revealed something strange. No one was inside. And the security system log showed no doors opening overnight. None. Every door sensor remained closed. Every window sensor remained closed. No alarm triggers, no entry, no exit. And yet the hallway camera had clearly recorded something leaving the bedroom. So the homeowner opened the security footage and watched. What the camera saw. The hallway is quiet. The bedroom door is closed. The lighting is stable. No shadows, no movement. Then the bedroom door slowly opens. Not wide, just enough to create a narrow gap. The motion detection system activates instantly. A digital box appears inside the bedroom and begins moving across the floor, from the bed toward the door. The motion is slow, controlled, almost exactly the speed a person might walk in a quiet house at night. But there is no one visible inside the box, just empty space. The motion box continues moving toward the hallway, then it crosses the threshold and exits the room. Seconds later, the recording ends. The hallway is empty again, and the bedroom door remains open. Security experts who later reviewed the footage agreed on one thing. The camera system behaved exactly as it was designed to behave. It detected movement. It tracked that movement accurately, and it followed the movement in a natural path across the room. The same path a person leaving the bed would likely take. But the camera never shows the object triggering the motion detection, just the digital box tracking it, and the door opening as it passes. At this point, the most obvious explanations seem simple. Someone must have left the house. But the security system recorded no doors opening and no windows opening. Every entry point remained sealed throughout the night, meaning if someone left the house, they did so without triggering any sensor, or they never left the house at all. But that raised an even more disturbing possibility. If the person had not left the house, where were they? The house was searched. Every room, every closet, the basement, the garage, nothing. The person who had been sleeping in that bedroom had vanished. No struggle, no signs of forced removal, just an empty bed, and security footage showing motion leaving the room. But not a person. One detail from the footage continues to bother investigators. The motion detection path. The system didn't just detect movement randomly. It followed a consistent pattern. From the bed to the door, across the threshold, into the hallway. Exactly the path a person leaving the room would take. Which raises the question, if the system tracked movement leaving the room, what exactly was moving? When investigators first reviewed the footage, their focus wasn't on the missing person, it was on the camera, because security cameras fail all the time. Motion sensors misread shadows. Compression artifacts can create strange distortions. Glitches happen. So the first assumption was simple. The camera system had made a mistake. But the deeper they looked into the recording, the less likely that explanation became. Most home security cameras record more than just video. They also record motion tracking data. Every time the system detects movement, it logs the exact frame where the movement begins, the path it follows, and the frame where it stops. When investigators opened the system logs from that night, they expected to see irregular patterns, random triggers, noise in the data. Instead, they saw something disturbingly precise. The motion detection began at 2:17:08 a.m., and it followed a smooth path across the room for 7 seconds. The tracking box moved at a consistent speed, not erratic, not jumping, not flickering, just a steady movement across the floor, exactly like a person walking. Then there was the door. In the video, the bedroom door opened slowly, but investigators noticed something subtle. The door opens before the motion tracking box reaches it, which means something must have pushed the door open first, something inside the room. But again, nothing appears on camera. One of the first theories suggested by security technicians was airflow. Sometimes strong airflow from a ventilation system can cause doors to move slightly, but that explanation didn't hold up, because airflow cannot trigger motion detection in a camera. The camera wasn't responding to the door moving, it was responding to something moving across the floor, and the motion detection box appeared before the door opened fully, meaning the system detected movement in the room first, and then the door opened as if something inside the room approached it. To understand what the camera had captured, investigators slowed the footage down, frame by frame. At normal speed, the motion box simply moves across the floor. But when slowed down, the pattern becomes clearer. The box doesn't glide smoothly. It moves in small, rhythmic shifts, almost like footsteps. Each shift corresponds to a slight change in the pixels on the floor. The system was detecting movement in the exact pattern of walking. But the camera shows nothing actually walking, just empty space. Another explanation considered was lighting. Infrared cameras can sometimes react strangely to changing light sources, but that night, the lighting inside the house remained constant. The hallway light was off. The bedroom light was off. Only the camera's infrared illumination was active, which means the room was being recorded in night vision. Infrared cameras detect heat differences and reflective surfaces. If something large enough to trigger motion detection had crossed the room, it should have appeared on camera, even if only as a shadow. But nothing appears, not even a faint outline. Investigators decided to run tests using the same camera system. They recreated the scene. Someone walked across the room in the exact same path. The camera tracked them perfectly. The motion box appeared around their body. Then they tested smaller movements. A pet crossing the floor. A blanket sliding off the bed. Even objects pushed across the ground. Every time, the camera showed the object causing the movement. Every time. Except in the original footage. Meanwhile, attention returned to the person who had disappeared. Their belongings were still in the room. Phone, wallet, clothes. Nothing suggested they had planned to leave. And the bed looked exactly like it had been left in the middle of the night. The sheets looked slightly disturbed, as though someone had gotten up, walked across the room, and left. But if they had left, the cameras should have seen them. The hallway camera recorded the motion box leaving the bedroom. But after that, something strange happens. The motion detection disappears. Immediately. No continued movement, no second trigger, just an empty hallway. If a person had continued walking down the hall, the camera should have tracked them. But it didn't. The motion detection stops exactly at the doorway, as if whatever left the bedroom stopped existing. The security system log from that night contains only one motion event: the bedroom exit. Nothing before it, nothing after it, no entries, no exits, no alarms, just 7 seconds of unexplained movement. Security engineers reviewing the footage noticed something subtle in the tracking pattern. The motion detection box changes shape several times during the movement. This usually happens when the system adjusts to the outline of a moving object. But in this case, the box is adjusting to something the camera cannot show. The software clearly believed it was tracking a physical object, yet the video never reveals it. At this point, investigators had two possibilities. Either the camera system had made an extremely rare and complex error, or something had triggered the motion detection without appearing on camera. Both explanations seemed unlikely, but the alternative raised a far more unsettling question. If the camera detected movement leaving the room, and the person inside the room disappeared that same night, what exactly did the system see? The footage shows the bedroom door opening, the motion box crossing the floor, and the hallway receiving something. But the hallway camera never shows it, just an empty space where motion should be. The system detected something leaving, but it never recorded anything entering, which means the movement began inside the room and ended in the hallway. By now, investigators had watched the clip dozens of times, and one pattern kept appearing. The motion detection starts exactly where the bed is, then it moves across the room. Exactly the path a person leaving the bed would take. But the camera never shows a person, just the movement, just the empty space, and the open door. At some point during the investigation, one of the technicians reviewing the footage said something simple, something that changed how everyone looked at the recording. They said, if the system tracked movement leaving the room, maybe the camera did capture exactly what happened. The room had motion. The door opened. Something crossed the floor, and something left. The camera recorded all of it, just not the way anyone expected. By the time investigators reached the third day of reviewing the footage, something about the recording had begun to bother them. Not just the fact that the camera tracked movement without showing anything, but the way the movement happened. Because the motion pattern wasn't random, it wasn't drifting, it wasn't sliding. It followed a rhythm, a very familiar rhythm. When analysts overlaid the motion data onto a floor plan of the bedroom, something unsettling appeared. The movement followed a natural walking path from the bed, across the open space beside the dresser, directly to the door. Even more disturbing was the speed. The motion detection covered the distance in roughly 6.5 seconds. That might not sound important, but when investigators recreated the walk themselves, moving naturally across the room, their time was almost identical, 6 to 7 seconds. exactly what the camera recorded, which meant whatever triggered the motion detection moved exactly like a person leaving the room. Same speed, same direction, same path. Except the camera showed nothing. Security software does not invent movement patterns. It simply reacts to pixel changes between frames. If the system tracks motion across the floor in a straight line, something caused those pixels to change. Something moved through that space, and the camera detected it, but whatever triggered those changes never appears in the footage, which left investigators facing an uncomfortable possibility. The camera may have recorded a real movement, just not something visible. While analysts studied the footage, investigators began speaking with neighbors. At first, there didn't seem to be anything unusual. No loud noises, no disturbances, no suspicious vehicles. But one neighbor remembered something small, something that seemed insignificant at the time. They said that around 2:20 a.m., their dog started barking. Not aggressively, just restless. The dog had been lying near the window that faced the missing person's house, and it had stood up suddenly, staring toward the house, barking softly for several minutes. Then it stopped. Dogs react to many things. Passing animals, strange sounds, but the timing matched the moment the motion detection ended. Just minutes after, the footage recorded something leaving the bedroom. Investigators reviewed the exterior cameras next. The house had one camera covering the front porch, another facing the driveway. Neither recorded anyone leaving. No movement on the porch, no vehicles arriving, no one walking down the street. Which meant if the missing person had left the house, they somehow avoided every exterior camera, or they never left the property at all. The house's alarm system kept detailed records of every door opening, front door, back door, garage entry. All of them remained closed throughout the night. The system logs showed no openings between midnight and sunrise. This meant something critical. If the missing person walked out of the bedroom, they did not exit through any monitored door, at least not according to the system. The bedroom sat at the end of the upstairs hallway, across from a small bathroom. The hallway led to a staircase that descended to the living room. Any movement down the hall should have triggered the hallway camera again, but it didn't. After the motion box crossed the bedroom doorway, the tracking stopped. No second motion event. No continuation down the hallway. Just silence. During one late-night review of the footage, a technician noticed something strange. In a single frame, just one, there appeared to be a faint distortion near the motion box. It wasn't a shape, not a shadow, more like a slight warping of the background, like heat rising from pavement on a hot day. But it only lasted for one frame, less than a fraction of a second. Then it disappeared. Compression artifacts in digital video can sometimes create strange distortions, but those distortions rarely align perfectly with motion tracking boxes. This one did. Exactly. Investigators also checked the thermostat logs. Modern homes often record when heating or cooling systems activate. Around 2:15 a.m., the heating system had cycled on, which meant warm air began moving through the vents. But that airflow should not have triggered motion detection. And it certainly shouldn't have produced a walking pattern across the floor. The movement still followed the same path, from bed to door, into the hallway, exactly like a person leaving. One detail remained unexplained. After the motion detection stopped, there were no additional camera triggers for hours. Not until the homeowner woke up later that morning. Which meant if someone had walked through the house, the cameras should have detected them again. But they didn't. It was as if whatever left the room simply stopped existing once it crossed the doorway. At this point, investigators began looking into the history of the house itself. Not because they believed anything supernatural had happened, but because sometimes a property's past can reveal overlooked clues, previous residents, past incidents, construction changes, anything that might explain what the cameras recorded. The house had been built in the early 1990s. 3 previous owners had lived there. No reported crimes, no missing persons cases, nothing unusual in the property records. Just a normal home, until that night. Late in the investigation, one of the camera technicians said something that stayed with everyone in the room. They had watched the footage dozens of times by then, studying every frame, every pixel, and they said the system isn't guessing, it's reacting, which meant something had triggered the motion detection. Something real, something that moved through the room. The camera simply failed to show it. By now, the investigation had reached a strange point. All the evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Movement began inside the bedroom. It crossed the room. It opened the door. And it entered the hallway. The system tracked the entire path. But the camera never showed what caused it, and the person who had been sleeping in the bed that night was never seen again. Before investigators closed the case file for the night, one final observation emerged. The motion detection box begins exactly where the bed was disturbed. Not beside the bed, not near the door, directly where someone's feet would touch the floor when getting up. As though someone stood up from the bed, walked across the room, and left. But if that person triggered the camera, why didn't the camera show them? Weeks after the disappearance, the footage was reviewed again. Not by investigators this time, but by an independent technician who specialized in digital video analysis. His job wasn't to solve the disappearance. It was simply to determine whether the camera had malfunctioned. If the motion detection system had somehow produced a false signal. Because if the camera had glitched, then everything that followed could be explained. But if the camera worked correctly, then the footage showed something far more disturbing. The technician recreated the bedroom scene exactly as it appeared in the video. Same camera, same angle, same lighting. The bed was positioned in the same place. The door opened the same direction. He even measured the distance from the bed to the doorway, just over 9 feet. Then he ran tests. Someone walked across the room. The camera tracked them. A pet crossed the floor. The camera tracked it. A blanket was pulled slowly across the bed. Again, the system detected motion. Every test produced the same result. The motion detection box always surrounded the object causing the movement, except in the original footage. Then the technician looked closer at the frames themselves, pixel by pixel, frame by frame. Digital video works by comparing images from one frame to the next. If pixels change in a certain area, the software interprets that change as motion. In the bedroom footage, those pixel changes were clearly visible. The floor texture shifted slightly with each movement. Small variations, tiny disturbances in the image. Exactly what you would expect if something passed across the camera's view. But there was still nothing visible, just the changes in the floor beneath it. The technician eventually reached a quiet conclusion. Something had moved across that room. Something that interrupted the infrared light from the camera. But whatever interrupted that light did not reflect it back into the lens, which meant the camera detected the movement without ever showing the object causing it. There was still the matter of the door. When analysts reviewed the moment the door opened, they noticed a subtle shift in the handle. The handle moved downward slightly, just before the door swung open, as though someone had pressed it. But again, no hand appears, no shadow, just the movement. Then the door opening. The reconstructed timeline now looked like this. At 2:17 a.m., movement begins beside the bed. The motion detection system activates. Something crosses the floor. The bedroom door handle moves. The door opens. The motion passes through the doorway. The hallway camera briefly tracks the movement. Then the motion stops. And the system records nothing else for the rest of the night. By the time the investigation ended, every normal explanation had been considered. Camera malfunction, lighting artifacts, airflow, system glitches. None of them matched what the footage showed, because the motion pattern was too consistent, too natural, too precise. Everything about the movement suggested something walking across the room, and yet nothing appears on camera. Despite searches and investigations, the person who disappeared from that bedroom has never been found. No confirmed sightings, no evidence of leaving the property, no explanation for where they went. The only record of their last moments in the house is that security footage. 7 seconds of motion, an open door, and an empty hallway. The footage raises a question investigators still can't answer. If the security system detected something leaving the room, and the person inside the room disappeared that same night, what exactly did the camera record? Did the system detect someone leaving? Or did it detect something else entirely, something that moved through the room, but could not be seen? There is one final detail in the recording, something most people miss the first time they watch it. Just before the motion detection ends, the tracking box pauses briefly in the doorway, for less than a second, as if something stopped there. Then it disappears. The hallway camera shows nothing, just an empty corridor and an open bedroom door. Security cameras exist to show us what happened when we weren't looking. But sometimes they record things we still can't explain, moments where something clearly moved, something clearly passed through the room. But the camera never reveals what it was. And in that quiet house, on that early morning, the system confirmed one thing with certainty. Something left the room, but nothing entered. And the person who slept there was never seen again. This happened here, but unexplained recordings aren't limited to security cameras. Sometimes the evidence comes from somewhere even more disturbing. A phone call, one that emergency dispatchers never forgot. In the next episode, we examine a chilling case involving a late-night emergency call. A caller whispered just 3 words: "I'm not alone." Then the caller stopped speaking. But the line didn't disconnect. For several minutes, dispatchers could still hear someone breathing on the phone. Slow, quiet, unmistakable. Police arrived at the house within minutes. But when they entered the home, they found it completely empty. No caller, no intruder, and no explanation for the breathing still coming through the open line. That story is next.